My dad's a doctor, and when he was in college, he studied field biology. And a lot of what they did was studying specimens of animals and everything. So he learned taxidermy, and he would go out with the game commissioner, and they'd get animals that had been killed, and they'd study them as part of the classes. I can remember as a kid, though, that my father used to always keep garbage bags and work gloves in the back of the car. And anytime the family would be out on a trip or something and there was a dead animal at the side of the road, not one that had been squished or anything, but one that had been bumped off to the side and was in good condition, we'd pull over. My dad would get out and take one of these garbage bags out of the station wagon and put the animal in, and we'd take it home. And when we'd get home, I remember my brothers and I would be really excited because we got to put on rubber gloves and everything. And my father would get his old surgical tools from medical school, and we'd basically dissect the animal. And he taught us all about the digestive system and the pulmonary system and the lungs, the heart, the stomach, and all those things. And I asked him about it recently to see if I had remembered all of this properly. And my mother chimed in and she said, yeah, don't you remember that you guys and your dad were picking up things off the street all the time and sticking them in plastic bags and sticking them in the freezer out in the garage? And she said you had raccoons and woodpeckers and possums and woodchucks and everything. And I kind of remember now that, like, while other kids were out sticking firecrackers in frogs or shooting squirrels with BB guns, you know, we were looking at what some raccoon had eaten just before it had been hit by a car. The whole thing sort of hardened me a little to the concept of a dead animal, but just didn't really prepare me for how I would feel when I'd actually run over one.
I was driving the family car to my grandmother's house. My grandmother lives in southern Maryland, and we were driving down the latter part of the trip, and I'd done a pretty good job up to this point. You know, I was only 16, so I'd just recently had my license, and I was really interested in proving to my parents I could handle the long haul. You know, I could do the car drive. And my dad was sitting on the right-hand side just to make sure nothing went wrong, and everybody else was in the back seat. And we're on I'd say I've got about 20 more miles to go, and we're on a 2-lane road. And all of a sudden, we're going down a hill, and a rabbit takes off from the left, and it crosses the other lane, and I guess I'm going somewhere between 45 and 55 miles an hour. And I know that I might hit it with my left tire. There's a possibility. And so I don't know whether to speed up or slow down. So what I did is I hit the brakes a little bit so that it would pass my left wheel, and I'd go over it and just straddle it. And then if I hit my brakes hard enough, it would squirt out. If it would continue running, it would squirt out between the other two tires. And I'm thinking all this before it happens. When the rabbit's still on the other side of the road, I'm making these decisions. It's amazing how fast that really happens. But at the same time, I'm thinking, well, if I slam on the brakes, I don't know if anybody else has seen this rabbit, my folks are going to have a cow, and they might not let me drive again. They might not trust my driving ability. So I decided to hit the brakes reasonably hard, and I did miss it. I could tell that it went in front of my left tire, and it went between the front two wheels. And all of a sudden, I relaxed a little bit, and I felt really, really good, because I thought, I've done it. And I really thought I was going to kill it, and then I saved its life. You know, I was a hero. I almost snatched death away from this little rabbit, and then I felt the thud on the back right tire. And it's horrible how you can feel, you're driving the car and there's a million pieces of metal between the steering wheel and the back tire, but I knew I had run it over. And, everybody in the car knew that I had hit something, and I immediately had this horrible look on my face. But I guess there was some victory in it because I hadn't compromised the safety of the passengers, and I hadn't compromised my parents' confidence in my driving. But I'd still taken his life away from this rabbit, and immediately I started thinking about the possibilities of, what's going to happen to its family, where was it going, why was it going there, and I just wasn't too comfortable with that.
I had a guy that I worked for, my foreman, he was a kind of a short, stocky, real fat guy, almost like a short Grizzly Adams. He was a real nasty beard. He smelled really bad, and I smoked probably about 5 packs of Pall Malls a day and had this deep, like, guttural voice. And he would just say to me, because I was the youngest guy on the crew, and so it was my job to get the animals off the road, and he'd say things that he'd just be like, kid. He'd always call me kid. He'd be like, kid, go pick that up. So I'd get out of the truck, and we'd have a shovel. We'd bring a bucket of oil with us, and you dip the shovel in the oil, you scoop up the animal, chuck them off to the side of the road, and then you dip the shovel back in the oil and dip it into the dirt, or dig it right into the dirt, and that kills the smell. And you dip it into the dirt to get rid of, to get the oil off the shovel, to dry it up again. But that kills the smell, because there's nothing in the world like the smell of a roadkill on a July morning.
On the right-hand side of the road, about, I guess, maybe a half mile up ahead, I can see 4 dogs. And whenever I see something like that, I get nervous because I think something might happen to it. And I've gotten to the point where I actually will go out of my way to make sure I'm not involved in killing those animals. So we're driving along, and I'm getting more and more anxious as we get closer, because, as each passing car goes by, they don't do anything to subject themselves to danger, and I don't, the possibility is increasing by the time I get to them that they're going to jump or they're going to do something. We're driving along and go past them, and I breathe this sigh of relief, and Gene knows what's going through my mind, because they were very close to the road. And we go past them, and they were on the right-hand side. I had gotten into the left-hand lane to give themselves, even more of a margin of error. I sped up enough so that I could get in front of a car, so I didn't, endanger anybody else on the road. And I passed them, and there's more cars going by, and I step on the brake really lightly to slow down, to give myself more time to see them maybe get killed. And sure enough, about maybe 2 or 3 cars, and there's a lot of traffic on the road, 2 or 3 cars after us, one of the dogs took off across the road. And this is in Carolina. It's nothing but 95 and straight road. Everybody's going at least 65 miles an hour. This one dog takes off across the road, and this car had no time to react. It hit like his head and shoulder area, and it hit him so hard that the dog actually spun around, and his head hit the side of the car. The car hit the front of him, and then spun around and smacked up against the side of the car. And I'm slowing down more and more. I'm getting to the point where I'm not even paying attention to the traffic. And I get into the right-hand lane so I can see even more of the other dogs and him. I can see him, the dead dog, in my rear view mirror. And on the side view mirror, I could see the other 3 dogs. And they were sitting there in such a shocked state. I mean, they had no idea what was going on, but they were pretty sure that it was really bad and that their friend was dead.
I slammed on the brakes. I do everything I can and it disappears under the car. And I sigh, and this is all happening really quickly. I just kind of sigh like, I missed it. And in that moment of just, it's okay, I just heard this horrible, horrible thump. And I knew that the cat had, well, the back tire of the car just hit the cat. I looked up in the rearview mirror, and there's this big lump in my stomach. And I look up, and I can see that the cat is flopping around in the street. Not just sort of twitching or anything, but it's actually sort of clawing at the air a little. And so I pulled up onto the next block, and I got out of my car, was going to go look and check it out. And just as I get out of my car, friends of mine who had pulled up directly in front of me get out of their car, and I tell them, you know, I just ran over this cat. I feel really bad. I want to go back and take a look. And my friend Carl says to me, don't go back, because there's nothing you can do, and it's only going to make you feel worse. When I told this story to a friend of mine, she said, you should have stopped immediately and backed up over the thing to put it out of its misery.
So I was, you know, just kind of picking up, like, litter. You have the stick, and you kind of pick up the litter. And I look over, I see something kind of in the brush, and I brush it away, and it's a dog's head. And now the head is, like, if you imagine the ground like this, I mean, the head is, like, flat, like this. Almost like how you see in the desert when you see those carcasses in, like, the desert movies. Still got the fur and everything on it. But when I look to the body laying behind it, the body's almost completely flat. Like, it's just like it's been laying there decomposing for God knows how long. And the body was just totally flat. So here you have this head that I'd say give it another couple months and it would be completely down to the bone. And this, you know, and then it's this body which looks like a laundry bag. There's just nothing in it. And the thing, it kind of made me think a little bit, because I was thinking about, you know, maybe it's someone's pet or whatever. And that, you see, we didn't have to, I guess the thing about that too, that probably was at one time a animal that had been hitting the road and they had shoved it off to the side. So in a sense, I guess that's what happens to them after you chuck them to the side. Because we really, you know, it was the kind of thing you never really think twice about what you're doing. You know, it's just part of the job. And that made me think a little bit, though, because it was, you know, the whole idea of it being someone's pet, and it's just rotting here on the side of this highway, and no one's going to notice it, and no one's going to do anything about it, because what are you going to do? So, I mean, I just left it there.